Napier? Can you put more Napier on the ration? Because that's what I have much of. But then, as they try to balance, you will see the challenge they get into. I'll be showing now a typical ration, an outlook of TMR of rumen 8 from that is given to the farmers when they are making rations. So monitor the dry matter. Don't put very wet feeds because it will affect the balancing and also the intake. By the way, that's what moisture does. It basically affects the nutrient intake for cows. Then maintain effective fiber. Fiber, I think it's good that we define fiber properly, or effective fiber. It is not just the chemical part, which we call ADF and NDF in the other part. It's also the physical fiber, the particle size, the length, because that will influence the rumination, saliva production, which is critical because digestion begins early, then the rumen function. So it is effective fiber that supports rumen health, the chewing activity, and it also prevents acidosis. Where you have very fine fibers, you have cows having very low rumination and lazy rumination. When there is high fiber or good, let me not say high, because again, if you put too much fiber, you're also losing on, as long as it's a TMR, you're also losing on other things because it occupies space. And at some point, the cow is going to feel their tummy and they're going to stop. So we are talking about good fiber. Good fiber should lead to good rumination in terms of the strength of rumination and the number of ruminations. Then, so when we talk about fiber, and perhaps that's a question that was coming up, why do they put on the analysis ADF, the acid detergent fiber, the neutral detergent fiber, and then you also have fiber on its own? It is because fiber goes beyond those two. It goes now to the physical, what we can be able to see, the sizes, which then affect how the cow ruminates. So that's important. Don't ignore those issues of putting long cuts on the trough. It's going to affect. Then always have analysis. It's important. And I said last time, because farmers will say it's expensive to analyze feeds. That's true. It's expensive, and we have to be careful how much cost we're incurring. But if you just do once, and this is your own production, then you can use it. You can use that analysis for a whole year, because this is really approximate analysis. It's not like spot on. It is proximate to help you, to guide you. It's a guiding light. So if you have planted another crop the same way, then most likely you can be able to use the same feed analysis for when the nutritionist comes. Unfortunately for our country, the challenge we have is that the people who sell to you feed do not connect with the people who do lab analysis for feed. So what happens, therefore, is that it is up to you to take your analysis to the lab, CropNut and others. I know there are other labs that exist. And then you also take your dairy meal. If you need to check whether your person is selling you some good standard dairy meal, it's unlikely that you get a consistent, because we have challenges. We are an importing country, the quality of the components therein. So I don't think we can expect 100% consistency. But again, there are some who are scrupulous. And what you may not be aware is that a lot of our feeds are already adulterated by the time they get to us, sometimes at the source, not necessarily at the person who sells to you. But there's a lot of that. We hope that we can get full accountability and ethics in this trade. But yes, that is the reality, especially the jams and so on, the grain-based components. So let's look at this comparison. Here I have put 3. The purpose of this is not to compare these Napiers again. It's to now give a view of sugar grace, which is a sorghum, and which is primarily an energy. But there are 2 ways that one may decide to cut it young. Cut at, for example, at flowering, instead of waiting for it to get into grain. You can see the energy level is a bit higher. And this I have seen with several samples of sugar grace. You can see the protein is a bit low. This is not really the focus, because we can actually consider sugar grace, when it is matured, to be a mirror forage of maize, only that maize is more superior because the corn sizes are bigger and the volume of each component is higher. So we can't judge sugar grace, therefore, so much on this. Then, but you see here, this is not typical of sugar graze. I think anybody who does sugar graze will be wondering how come we are seeing starch below detectable levels for sugar graze, which is a sorghum. It is because this sample is for sugar graze that was harvested at that stage. So it was not meant for grain, and the farmer was not interested in grain. They wanted to be able to cut early and get more protein. And that's why it makes sense to compare it with other forages that are more protein-based, like Napier. You can see this one, the ADF is lower. This one is much lower. Of course, we say these are not very. We are not too sure with this, so we had doubts about this. So don't focus on it. This looks very close to what the reality. Then dry matter. Look at the dry matter. Impressive. 27.0. So one would ask then, why can't I then plant sugar graze and do away with Napier? Because I have a very impressive dry matter, which is, even if we had very nice dry matter here, if we had let this Napier grow a bit, it would probably be 20, 22. But this is still high, almost at the level of good silage at 30% dry matter. But we go back to the reason of what is your problem. Is your problem biomass? If your problem is biomass, then will you be able to get the biomass you get from Napier, well taken care of Napier, as you can get from, if you plant sugar graze? Will you get the same? The answer is no. And then now Napier is giving you a life of 5 years and above. It's a perennial that can be managed in one field, proper management, 5 years without removing it. But sugar graze, if you get 3 crops, then the fourth one might be there, but you may decide to forego it and have a new crop. So it has ratoons, yes, but you have to regrow again. You have to regrow after 1 year. So the cost of growing, and then of course, now if you then compare the number of cuts you have in a year, most likely then you may opt for Napier if your challenge is biomass. However, if you want to take sugar graze to maturity so that you have some starch out of it, and you can go to 10%. I have seen 10% sugar graze starch, which is very good, almost comparing with a poor quality maize. Then in that case, you can have sugar graze coming into your ration, not as a protein now, even though it carries its own protein in its nutrition bundle, but coming with the starch as an energy forage. And that is why we now have rations which have Napier and sugar graze as complementary, not as substitutes. But in this case, when you see the sample, here they are substitutes, one or the other, because it is harvested early, and therefore the starch is not showing. There was no starch to show because it was still at that stage. So this is a critical areas to put your eye on when you're comparing these three. Let's look at this ration now. I need to be told how many minutes I have because this is a 1 hour lesson. So Jerry, please advise me. Or someone else.
It's about 3:30.
Okay, 3:30. So we've done about 50 minutes. So let me see what I can do on this. I don't know whether your screens are showing a drawing on a blue pen on the screen, or is it just mine?
Yes, we can see that.
You can see that?
Yeah, we can see the blue doodles.
Okay, that was not me. That was not me. So I don't know. There are people who have that capability from their end, and I hope they don't draw other things. So, but it is not conflicting, so it's okay. We can do with it. So this is now, and this is really a phase of ruminate, and it might look a bit detailed, but I can put a beam on where I want you to look at. This ration was made for a 580 kg cow, the live weight, on mid-lactation. I think at the entry of mid-lactation, that's about the second set of 100 days after birth. So that would be between 200 and 300. No. 100 and 200 days. That's mid-lactation. The first 100 days, we can consider it early, within which the cow should be inseminated. I don't think we're achieving that, but good to define scientifically what we mean by mid, early, and late. After late lactation, we have a dry period, and the cow gives birth, and we enter early lactation again. So this lactation is for this ration is for mid lactation, and you notice that it has you can see how much silage this cow was eating. 23 This is an implemented ration, by the way. We have Napier, which was pak chong, at 15 kgs of Napier. So I want you to look at the volume of Napier we are using for the ration, and you will see the limitations that we discussed the other time about Napier comes in with a moisture limitation, and therefore, when it's put on the ration, it tends to affect the dry matter, and that is why it tends to be capped, especially for heavier cows. That is for anyone who is wishing to who plans to give their cow TMR. For people who give their cows to fill their stomach, a cow can just eat Napier and hay and a bit of dairy meal. They get what you're looking for. But if you're feeding that animal right from birth like that, most likely an animal which by genetic predictions would have got to 600 kgs at mature weight 5 years on the third birth, most likely, if you go and weigh, and I think the vets know this, if you go and weigh those animals, they are weighing between 340 and 380 kgs, and that's a mature animal. So the cow looks small, and you think that it is not a pedigree. They may not have, since we are not doing a genetic audit, we may not know for sure. But some of those animals are very, very highly advanced genetically. But they were fed on high moisture feed from when they were young, and they have suffered dry matter intake continually. Let's say, technically, they have never been well fed. In Swahili, we say, haijawai shiba, all their life, unless we are counting based on the view of the stomach, which is basically filling the rumen with biomass. But nutritionally, they have been hungry. I'm not going to use more Swahili. I can see we have people from different countries. So I just meant that they have never have a full stomach in as far as nutritional requirements are concerned. Then here we have hay. Hay, when it is low quality, the ruminate terminology is natural grassland, so that they classify between good and bad or good and low quality. So this cow is producing 22 liters of milk, and the farmer is selling at 60 shillings. If you look at the value, the money he's making after feeding, they have 622 shillings after feeding. Of course, the other costs that are non-feeding costs are not deducted. But if you see, this is already a predictor of profit. Even if you're going to now add the managing cost, insemination, and so on, you can see that the farmer is in the money. Of course, the other determinant and why they're in the money is the selling price, 60 shillings. For those who are not Kenyans, you can divide, this is like half, this is about $50 cent or about $45 cent, because our dollar is about 120, 130 for calculation purposes. So then this cow, you can see it is 60-40. 60-40 is very typical of 60-40, that is the forage to concentrate, is very typical of mid-lactation. It is not unusual that you see higher levels of concentrates in different lactations, but 60-40 is basically the book value that we work with. It's really a very good balance. Starch level 20. So if you see this, what we are really trying to balance here is the dry matter intake. It is green at 96%. Really a very good trial of making sure the dry matter complies. Then we have the metabolizable energy at 1 or 2% showing green. We have protein showing green. We also have these essential elements, which are also showing, those ones may not really be a key driver. What we worry so much is when we don't have achieved the green here. And I think last week when Angela was training, she may have touched on some core nutritional considerations, because she is she's a nutritionist. I'm not one. But for basic understanding, these are the critical elements that we are balancing on. And this would be an excerpt of Rumen 8 ration that is given to the farmer with explanation on all these things. Let's see another cow. This cow, we have said this farmer is in profit with 15 kgs of Napier. As you can see, the driver of the ration here, the base of feed here is silage at 23. I suggest you ignore the dry matter volumes because you don't weigh forage on dry matter. But I want you to check one thing. The line number 2, which is Napier Pakchong grass, early vegetative or early stage. The dry matter value here is 1.79. If you divide 15 by 1.79, or if you ask yourself, how many times has this number been multiplied to get this? For silage, 7.87 looks like it has been multiplied 3 times. So meaning that the rumen 8 threshold for dry matter, it's actually indicated here. Why am I going too far? It is 30%, 35 if you're lucky. But they have used 30% because you can see that this is 3 times. 3 times. But for Napier, this is not 3 times. This is about 7 times. 7 point something times. So you can see that they're using a dry matter of about 12%, which is a dry matter that we saw with the improved Napier varieties on the sample that we gave, meaning that the nutritionist used that sample to make the ration because they didn't have another sample. If they had another sample, like for Kakamega showing 22%, then this dry matter volume would be about 3 for us to achieve 15 because it will be 5 times. Just like the way 20 goes 5 times into 100. In that case, the dry matter value would be looking like it is the biomass divided by 5 or dry matter times 5. So here it's a much bigger value, meaning the dry matter value for that Napier sample that was used for this ration was very low. That is how it affects. You then have a limit to how much Napier you can give. We have this cow, which is 500 kgs. I need to mention this. There are not many farmers that we have found with 500 kg cow. For those who are Kenyans, these cows are easy to find in some certain farms in Kiambu, Nyeri. Nyandarua is very hard. Nyandarua, you will find one farm because they are doing a lot of open grazing and they have really been slow to go to zero grazing and feeding the animals with TMR or basically just contain the animals. And there's a lot of standing cows. Also in North Rift, standing cows that are meant to be grazing, but they exhaust the grass, but whoever is coming to feed them comes to take them home. And there was no other feed available on the field. So if they have picked the grass, they would have picked and they are done, then you assume they are full, but they are not. So we end up with very low live weights, and getting a 500 kg cow is very hard in areas where they're doing open grazing. This is not, and I said last time, open grazing is not grazing on pastures. What we do is not exactly that. If you want to see grazing, you can see South Africa. You can see some lower parts of Tanzania, where some people who've come from South Africa are doing proper grazing in paddocks. They fertilize their grass after cows move to the other paddock. They mow it up, put fertilizer, 50 kgs in an acre. Then they close it and wait for it to grow until the cows come back. And you can see that is now proper nutritional intake. But leaving a cow on the grass that is naturally growing, then every day the cow is there. Even if you fed something in the morning, most likely by the time they finish 24 hours, they have hardly gone even into half of the required dry matter intake. And the result is a cow that will never reach their genetic potential, regardless of how meticulous your breeding is. So what was my point? We are not getting 500 kg cows. And that also explains why we have much less milk. If you can manage this cow, then of course, most likely you also get more value from it. If you can't manage, you can go for smaller cows. It's okay, but feed them up to their level of the required dry matter intake. So this cow was 500 kgs, early lactation. You can see the forage concentrate ratio is here we have a 69% versus 31. So you can see that it is not 60-40. So early lactation, based on the dietary requirement, it is possible to have a much higher values of concentrates. Actually, we have I think I have seen 50-50 in Israel. Yeah, very big cows, very high requirement to challenge their genetic potential, and then you see that they have much less forage, but they have a way of managing the acidosis and such problems. So this cow is giving the farmer 356 shillings before other costs. The farmer is selling at 50 shillings per liter, and the cow is producing how much? 19 liters. So you can see that this farmer might go into a loss, most likely, or might go to break even easily, because you can see the amount compared to the other guy who had 622 shillings. This has about 50% of that value. So there's a risk there. Let's go to this other ration, which also has Napier at the same value of dry matter to make this ration possible. A 480 kg cow. There's someone who's not unmuted. You can check so that you can mute. We have a 480 kg cow, live weight, early lactation, 24 liters at 60 shillings per liter. This is wonderful. This is a very good cow, but you can see the margin above feed cost 713. This farmer is selling at 60 shillings. It's early lactation, so 63.37 forage to concentrate ratio, and the cow is producing 24 liters. So good production, good price. But let's go back here now. This cow has 27 kgs of silage. Silage is driving this ration. And we have very low, we can see very low value of hay, because we can also get fiber from, there's fiber in Napier, there's also fiber in silage. But good silage will not have sufficient fiber. It may not have enough fiber. So we need to add, that's why we have more, we have some hay or straw, whichever you like. I can dare say that sometimes there's no difference, unless you are lucky to get silage at the right stage or in the high season when it has more leaf. When it does not have more leaf, it has more sticks, and therefore the leftover is high, intake at trough is very low, and therefore you are better off with barley straw or wheat straw. Rice straw is also good, but it's a much lower value compared to the other straws. So 12 kgs of Napier. Again, you see this is a good producing cow, but the Napier didn't go beyond 12 kgs. 12 kgs of Napier is a very low volume compared to the others. If you look at the percentage in dry matter, it's like 8 times more. So 8 times less. The amount of Napier here in dry matter, let's say, yeah, about 5 times more. So the driver of this ration is silage. If you remove silage, the energy here will be red. The dry matter, yes, will also decline because silage is contributing. Actually, silage here is the largest contributor of dry matter, because it may not be silage may not have higher dry matter than hay, but the hay here is very small. So in terms of how much hay is in the ration, it's low. So the real contributor of dry matter is silage, because of the volume of silage in the ration. So if you remove silage here, everything here will go to the red, because silage also has protein, 10%. Standard silage, good silage. So goes to the red. If you remove Napier here, you can see that you'll have a challenge with what will be affected here is protein to be on the red, and also energy. Napier has energy, has a level of energy. So this has taken a lot of back and forth to balance, but you can see we still are not able to feed more Napier. If you really are looking at having Napier as your base of feed, there are chances that you still need a key driver that has more energy, more starch, but still maintaining a good level of fiber and a good level of protein. This ration, perhaps the last
David, have we lost you? We've lost our audio from you, David.
A few minutes, Jerry will change the Wi-Fi. Sorry for that.
Thank you, Dolly. So, sorry for the technical hitch.
I'm back.
David will be right back. Okay, you're back. Perfect.
I'm back. Yes. Yeah. Sorry. It is. I think my dedicated Wi-Fi ran out. And thank you. I see people are attentive. Eliakim, Julius from Tanzania. I see we have a lot of people here that I was not seeing. But let me share back because I don't have much time. What I had, I was here. Yeah, is it full view of the slide, Jerry?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, I continue then. We were at this cow that is the smallest cow in this ration. This cow is 400 kgs live weight, early lactation 14 liters, and they are selling milk at 50. I pointed at how much Napier they are taking. Then I was talking about silage. If you look at these rations, it looks like dairy farmers will have to have a way of figuring out how to get maize silage. Because the other countries that, if we don't have possibility to graze properly, like South Africans are doing, New Zealand, Australia, then we may have to go the Dutch way, because the cows we have are theirs. They are the ones who gave us the cows, and we are producing with them 10 liters when their national average is 29 liters per cow per day. We are not doing even, we are doing about a third of that, a third. So, and that is affecting the overall outlook of dairy, and people are thinking it makes losses. But we are not getting it right on feeding. Of course, there are many people who have the cow for a different reason. They probably want the cow to have milk for the home, which is fine. But if you're in commercial dairy farming, there has to be a way of getting a proper energy forage, and silage might be the way to go. I like the fact that some companies like Cowdish have gone for farm to silo to ensure that you get your silage without having in between packaging and so on, just to avoid cost, to reduce cost. And also getting it nearer instead of getting it very far. But most of all, if you're producing on your own, getting very good volume. Don't get 7 tons in an acre and you still want to drive the economics of dairy. Most likely it will not work. If you're not getting 12 tons per acre, maybe it's good to consider getting it elsewhere. People have tried to put in substitutes, but you see, the most viable substitute then will be a forage, a concentrate. The question would be, how much concentrate can you push to a ruminant to be able to make for the lost silage or the absent silage? So I think we have to find a way. I was discussing with in a meeting last week on Monday, and maybe people may have to consider where we have a lot of deficiency. People may have to consider community bankers, where we have a banker, having say like 1,000 tons, where farmers can buy in the morning and just feed every day, instead of, if they don't have cash flow, to buy a lot. But to imagine that we can totally do without this, it might be tricky. I have seen people saying that you can use Napier as base of silage, a base of fodder. Makitosha has done very well in that, to put Napier, and then you balance it with a lot of straw, because already at preservation is with straw. I don't think Makitosha is here. I think she told me she's traveling. I wanted her to be part of the call. And that's a breakthrough. But I think it's also good to note that Makitosha does not do optimal production. She's not aiming at optimal. She balances her cow's production based on how much milk is needed in the market. It is not, there's a difference between optimal production and where you want the cow to produce as much as they can based on their genetic potential. That's not the model for Makitosha. So you will find that she has very good animals. She even has some gills, 50%, the one that she has presented in Kagrik, Magic 50. I think that's, you are aware about that, which can produce more, but she's not challenging them to produce that much. So it is not, the ration that she's talking about is not the ration for driving optimal production, but it has reasonable production. It is balanced. It is good on rumen. It is good on microbial growth. Beautiful. So, but the intention for someone in Kamulu or somebody in Thika and who has a very good market and a very good cow, 500 kg live weight and above, sorry, I'm not able to give examples for other countries. I'm giving examples for Periaba, Nairobi. Then in that case, you may have to go for a ration that gives you, that challenges the genetic makeup of your cow to give you the best they can, because you can get a good price. Again, if you can't get a good price, then you can go the model of Makitosha, where I say, if I'm not getting a good price, I know my cow can do 38 kgs at peak, but I'll let her produce for me 25 until the prices are good. Even Dutch do that. When they was having problems with Russia, Ukraine, I don't know whether they were able to do their trade talks to ensure that their market, because they are net exporter, they begin to manage their rations in a way that the cows can produce below their genetic potential, because the market is not behaving well. And then they're able to manipulate them to come back. So they keep them still well fed so that you're not interfering with their calving interval. They are still getting on heat in good time, 70 to 80 days after birth. If it's heifers, they are getting inseminated at between 13 and 15 months since birth. If it's weaning, they're weaning at double the birth weight. So basically, they are feeding properly. They are not losing on milestones for growth and for lactation. But they are managing milk production by changing rations because the market is not good. So we also need to learn that art, but don't copy somebody who is going for minimum production or average production because their main work is breeding. I think it's important to check that. For this cow is making a loss for sure, because the farmer is getting 121 shillings, margin above feed. So if you now begin to work the labor cost, the breeding cost, the bills, power, the bills of water, if any, then of course this cow is making a loss. And what makes it worse is that she's selling at 50. Maybe if it was 60, you can justify this feeding. So for this person, we struggle a bit to confirm this ration, because you can see the margin of feed is very low. And they can say, oh, change my ration, but still these traffic lights you see here must remain a go, which is green. You cannot convince a nutritionist to leave your farm having put what you wanted, but their rations are looking, some are red, others are green. They have not then done the work, because they only do the work, they only leave, they only take coffee when they see that all these 3 bars are green. If they are not, they have not done the work. One of the advantages of doing this getting a nutritionist is that they also are able to utilize some things that you have and which you don't know how to use. You might be having leftovers of beans, not the beans themselves, but the pods. You might be having some grasses that you got from a clean roadside, not very encouraged, but some people get that, or some bushes which are clean, they have no phytosanitary issues. Then you can bring them and say, I have a lot of grass, we don't want to waste it. They take to the lab, they see what value it has, they give it a name on the software, and you can end up utilizing it. But what has been found is that farmers are also giving concoctions. You have your silage, you have Napier, you have this, then you're adding some seed cakes on your own, which is already this dairy meal, which has a component of that or an equivalent. Then they are getting some supplements. I don't want to use names because names might point to companies, and I have no intention to say some supplements are not important. They are all important. And I think they are training people to know how to make value out of them. But then you find that a farmer has a lot of things that they're giving the animal. The question is, when you put pen to paper, are we still in profit? Because if we continue doing a farming that is not making profit, and we are not aware, then we also give dairy a bad picture. And this is the biggest sector now in Africa. People are coming here. In fact, this week we have Ethiopians coming to Perfometer to visit. And I can see that farmers I think this year we've done quite a bit of international missions. People coming to Kenya to see how are you doing this, because you have a big dairy sector and it is growing. But when you look back, we have struggles in certain areas, and we also can't even be able to match our growth, because the growth of dairy sector right now in terms of consumption is about 8 to 9% by Kenya Dairy Board numbers, and our growth in production is between 1 and 2%. So we are not actually likely to meet our consumption needs in the coming days if we are going to continue feeding like this. At a more strategic level is to decide, how do we ensure that every farmer can be able to get silage, every farmer can get Napier, and every farmer can be able to get a TMR. What is challenging farmers from moving to TMR feeding? And why are farmers feeding single component on the trough, putting this, putting that, tomorrow putting this and that, and then they are still commercial? I think these are critical questions that we need to ask ourselves. But at this point, which is really now at 4 p.m., I would like to stop and say thank you for listening. If there are things that we have not covered under this, then we can probably answer the questions later. But for now, we allow Erevuka to continue with the folder series, perhaps by giving us another folder, which we can cover extensively as we have done with Napier. I'd like to stop there, Jerry, and give the meeting back to you.
Thank you, David. It is always a pleasure to listen to you. I think you've gotten that compliment that you're a very good teacher. We have learned a lot. I think the take-home message for me is, as a farmer, I need to be aware of my goals so that I can be able to choose the right ration for my cows. So it's important for us to know what our goals are in our farms and to be able to get a full view in terms of profitability, feeding, and the kind of cows we have on our farms. And I would like to mention at this time that Perfometer offers us service of being able to have an overview of your farm, and able to do rations and also advice on different aspects of trying to make farms profitable. As David mentioned, it's already 4 o'clock, so we only have a few minutes to look at the questions that were posted on the chat. And I will start with question number 1. Which is the best way to feed molasses? I have an issue with silage with added molasses. It's corroding the animal's teeth. David, if you could please address that question. And
yeah, I think I wish we could know how how they are feeding for them to get that kind of outcome. But molasses is really an additive, unless it was used at sometimes for best practice, it is used in preservation. So it is cured through the silage fermentation. It also assists in fermentation, and therefore chemically it doesn't come out as strong, but it does the work. And when we have good maize silage, of course, we don't use molasses because there's enough for the bacteria to feed on for them to do the work. So, however, when we have low energy, low sugar forages like Napier may not have sufficient, so we can use molasses at the point of making the silage, and therefore at the point of feeding, you don't have to add. However, people use molasses to increase palatability, not necessarily absorption after digestion, but to increase for cows to eat their feed and finish and probably boost the dry matter intake for that day. The best thing is to sprinkle on the feed that they have not eaten or what you want them to feed on. If you have a sprayer, like a knapsack, you just spray so that it goes into very small, tiny streams. Then what cows do is that they are following that sweetness, and they end up finishing the feed. So you can check how much you're putting, because you probably might be putting a lot. But sprinkling on the trough at the point of feeding has been found to be okay. But best use, of course, is also when you have a chance for it to go through the process of fermentation by making it an additive at the silage making process as opposed to at the point of feeding. We will get more information and maybe from the farmer on what amounts and what could be causing this kind of outcome, because for now we can only answer based on the face value of the question.
yes, maybe perhaps even look at what else
they are feeding. Yeah, what else? Yes, yeah. There's a lot we don't know. I think for vets, they would not answer the question on, like this, but because this is not a very sensitive area, we can give ideas. If you are talking about an animal has this disease and I'm a vet, I would be very careful not to try to attempt to answer the question until someone comes and finds out. But for this, try what we have mentioned. And if there's need to look more, then you can always ask for assistance. Go ahead, Anjali.
Next question, would you consider Napier plus maize jam or maize meal plus inoculants made into silage a complete meal. So basically, Napier value added with maize jam plus inoculants, is that a complete meal?
Okay, now you see, when we to consider a complete meal, it's you are saying, are we able to judge the dietary completeness of a meal by looking at the composition? No. It is good to make a ration first, then the ration directs your mixing. You don't mix first, then you test. You make a ration first. You basically tell the nutritionist, this is what I have. I have Napier, I have maize jam, mix for me. And some of these guys come with a computer on the farm, which is really very good. Then they sit with you and show, tell me what you have. Then you can see what is missing right on your screen, and they can explain to you the reason why we have a red on the energy is because your maize jam has this kind of energy. And if you continue putting more amounts, yes, it is good from a face value, but it will be exceeding the amount of concentrate that we can put in this ration, and it's going to give us more problems. So it is not possible to judge a TMR based on observation. It is always advisable to have the ration done first, and then you can mix based on the ration. So basically, the ration formulation guides the mixing, not the other way around. I think that dairy farmers have complained that ration formulation is very expensive. But you know what? You can just have one ration in a year. Unless a lot of things have changed on what's available for feeding, then you can change the ration. But you can just have one. I have seen Dutch farms that basically give you rations, and they have had it for years because they have a ration for every group. This is for early lactation. It was made like 5 years ago, but they have never changed what they feed. So how much cost goes into it? Back to you.
Thank you for that response. Another question, I have half an acre on Lucerne. How do I use it in my TMR?
Lucerne is important for TMR, but like, I think I go back to ration formulation. What else does the farmer have besides the Lucerne? And for the farmer to have decided to grow Lucerne, does it mean that they are okay with the fodder supplies across the year? Because Lucerne will give you about a ton per cut, can have as many as 8 cuts, or if you have proper watering. But if you compare with Napier, Napier will have the same number of cuts, but with a higher volume. But then Lucerne has very impressive nutritional profile. But do you have enough feed to take you through the year for you to have given part of your space to Lucerne? I don't know the answer. But if to put it in TMR, again, it is a ration that you need to make. If you're a smallholder farmer, rations can even be made from a distance. You just tell the person, this is what I have, this is what I have, and then you may get a generic, closer to accurate ration. It may not be accurate, but your cost will be less because someone does not have to drive all the way to your farm to check what you have. But for bigger farmers who can be able to pay even for transport, it's good for the nutritionist to see what you're talking about. Because somebody will tell you, I have Lucerne, but then you discover that the Lucerne they have has been affected by pH, and therefore the profile of that Lucerne from looking at it might not meet the one that is in the software. The software says that we are using 18% crude protein at a dry matter of 90% because we are talking about Lucerne hay. Then you discover farmer is feeding fresh cut, which does not have the same dry matter. And therefore the effective crude protein is not what is in the book. So it is important for them to see what you're talking about. Others will say, I have maize, silage, but they removed the corn. So you give a ration, you pick the data on the list, full corn maize silage. But what they have, corn was removed and they're not aware. So always nice to have the nutritionist, because he can say, for this particular one, for this component, let me go and test. Give me 3,000, I go and test it. Then we can be able to include it in the ration more accurately based on the actual feed profile. So I think I stop there, but let's go back to ration formulation as a practice for every farmer, and we are here to assist.
Yes, I would like to echo your sentiments. I think the question of rations has really come up, even in all the other lessons that we've had. So I think we need to perhaps come up with a direct service from Perfometer to be able to help farmers out with rations. The other question is, could we have a fattening program for goats and sheep? Farmers who get male calves mostly give away with a belief of low income. I think we should touch on this. So
Okay,
the farmer
that's
is
a different
asking
topic.
about fattening. Yes.
Yeah, that's
So,
a different topic. I think
that's a
by next
different
year
topic.
we might have next year maybe programs on sheep feeding, but for now they're not ready. So we wait. I don't think Ruminate yet has been able to onboard. They have onboarded beef, but they haven't onboarded most small ruminants. So, but it's a good question to keep so that we know what farmers are asking for and we develop it.
Last question here. What is a good size to chop Napier? Others say too small size is not good for the rumen.
Correct. Very small, like powder size, is not good for the rumen. It actually irritates the rumen. So forage chopping is recommended at 1 centimeter. But also, even with 1 centimeter, we are assuming that you also have straw or hay in the ration. Because then, if you're feeding TMR, even if you didn't get an excellent chop size on Napier, maybe it was finer, then it is not fed as a single component. So the improved sizes of chops in hay will then rescue the overall chop size for the rumen because it is fed as a ration. So when you ask such a question, the follow-up question would be, are you feeding TMR? Do you have more things in that bite than just Napier? But if it is just feeding Napier, then you can go with 1 centimeter. For silage, we actually write 0.8 millimeter to, 0.8 centimeters to 1 centimeter, because we also want to take it to TMR. If you take it to TMR when it is too much, when it is too big, first of all, we struggle with mixing, even if it has gone through silage. Then if it is too large, even the compaction is not very effective because it allows air to get in. So you have chances of hitting on the edges where the compaction is not very good. So one of the reasons why we are looking at 1 centimeter is not because it's the best. In fact, cows might appreciate a little longer, maybe 1.5 centimeters. But we are also considering two things. At the bunker, it is not TMR. At the bunker is a single forage component. It is either Napier with straw or it's maize alone. So make it larger, cows are happy, but then you don't compact and you have air spaces and you have spoilage risk. Then at the TMR mixing, if it is larger, again, you don't get a homogeneous mix. So cows are going to select what they want, which is not good if you really want to get a TMR out of your feeding. So yeah, that explains it. I think we always want to have a follow-up question so that we know we can be able to answer the question more exhaustively. But I do appreciate we don't have enough scope for a lot of stories on the chat. We can only answer based on the one-liners that you have put there on the chat.
Sorry, David, one last quick question that I missed out. Are rice straws safe to use, like the ones sold at Moya Rice Scheme?
Yes, they are. As a fiber, just like any other straw. I only say that by way of profiling, if you have barley straw and wheat straw, you have a better feeding outcome than rice. But rice is a perfect straw. It's not a problem. It's just that it is ranked lower than barley and wheat straw. But it's good feeding. But let it be fed also as part of TMR. If you put it on the TMR, you can see that fiber is improving, dry matter is improving, because these are hays and they are 85% dry matter. So if you are struggling on dry matter, on that bar of dry matter is showing red, put straw, and then you have hacked it. It may not come with a lot of, you don't expect much protein, maybe 3% if you're lucky. But yes, it is a good feed, and not just rice straw. Any residual material from agriculture that cows can be able to eat. If you're able to determine their nutritional analysis and you're doing it habitually in your farm, please include it in your TMR. One of the advantages of TMR is that you can be able to utilize a wider variety of residual materials into dairy feeding.
Thank you for that response, David. I think we have come to the end of our lesson. I'd like to thank you all for participating and to just mention that this conversation does continue on our DAFMA group. So if you're not part of the DAFMA group, please go on the chat. I believe that the link for the DAFMA group has been posted. Join us as we continue with this conversation and other conversations around livestock, feeding, production, husbandry. It's a very rich group. And I'd like to remind you that this is a series. We're doing a fodder series. We've been able to look at Napier. We've been able to look at hay. We hope to look at other forage like sorghum that David was talking about, and other proteinous forages. After that, we are looking forward to continuing on to look at compounded feed, so we can be able to bring together our TMR. So when you're talking about TMR, we're talking about compounded feed, we're talking about our forages, our sources of protein, energy. When we speak about TMR, we know exactly what we're talking about. Even when a nutritionist comes on your farm, you're able to actually have a conversation with the nutritionist. When they mention energy, when they mention protein, when they mention fiber, at least we want to be able to have an inkling or an idea of what they're talking about. So I encourage you to continue joining us every Friday at 2:30 as we continue to learn together. Knowledge is power. I'd like to thank David and the Perfometer team, and to all the guests who are here today. Thank you for your time. Hope to see you next Friday at 2:30.
Jerry, you can also alert the farmers that whenever they get this invite, it is always nice to share with other farmers, because this platform is meant to reach many people, many countries. That's why it's online. So I like it when I see the numbers of other non-Kenyans are increasing. That's good. It is the essence of doing an online program. So please share when you get this knowledge, because farmers who can afford an online lesson are able to join every Friday. It was important to add that. Thank you very much, Jerry.
Yes, I even see a thank you from Nigeria. So it's good to see the many countries represented. And we've shared the link of the DAFMA WhatsApp group. Feel free to join DAFMA. Thank you, and have a good afternoon, evening,
Thank
actually.
you, and bye.
Bye.